Hey, you're listening to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. As always, I'm Grady, and live on Skype we got Josh.
Hey.
Typically we split the show. We talk about Raw for half of it, and we talk about SmackDown for half of it. But, there were a lot of developments on Raw this week. Like, an insane amount. So, sorry, it might get a bit of a disproportionate amount of the show this week. There was just so much chaos and madness that we are going to have to get through. We actually open up the show with a United States Championship match. A little delayed, obviously it was the one we were meant to have already had. Apollo Crews captures both belts and is now the undisputed United States Champion.
Woo! I would have rather had this at SummerSlam, but at least we now have a direction for Apollo Crews.
Yeah, it seemed as though this match got a little bit rushed purely for something later on in the night that we'll get to. The Hurt Business had to move on, and to do so, I guess they needed to drop the United States Championship they were pretending to have over to Apollo, and let him run around as the United States Champion.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where they go from here with Apollo Crews. But I'm liking his run so far.
We haven't really had any indication of who his next challenger is going to be now that the Hurt Business has presumably moved on. MVP wanted a rematch and stuff. Maybe that's the way we go. I don't know. But after that, the floor's wide open for Apollo.
Definitely a lot more open than Drew's is.
Yeah, definitely. And then if we look over into the women's tag team division, just got a little bit more open, as it seems as though, thanks to Kevin Owens, 2/3 of the Riott Squad are back to being reunited together.
Yeah, it definitely appears to be a direction with Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan. And I think they're going to be the ones that will eventually overtake Bayley and Sasha for the tag titles.
Mm-hmm. I think they're definitely being lined up for a real big women's tag push. And typically at the end of those, that's what you get, is you get those women's tag team championships. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because at the moment they've got that whole, do they still have the chemistry? Can they still pull it off together kind of thing? And I'm sure that'll be shaken off in a couple weeks, and they'll be back to running around together as normal. And we'll see how the two crazy psychotic people merge themselves back together into a team.
Yeah, at this point I'm feeling like, why even bother with breaking them up in the first place? But it gives us a much needed female tag team that we were sorely lacking, and one that has potential to dethrone the champions.
Yeah. Where to skip now? Let's stay in the women's division. Nia Jax. She has been suspended indefinitely without pay.
But she'll be back on Raw next week, regardless. That's how these things work.
You think indefinitely means 1 week?
Yeah, although their usual method in which to get around that is not going to be an option this time. So it'll be interesting to see how they pull this one off. Because you can't buy a ticket to a show that's not selling tickets.
Yeah. And usually if you've been suspended for attacking an official, the thing you don't do is attack the official again. So they're probably not going to do any sort of apology or any sort of weasel out of it either. So we will have to see how Nia Jax finds her way back onto Raw. But at least for now, it's distracting one of the potential challenges for the Raw Women's title, because it looks as though there's a weird three-way shuffle happening for it at the moment. Sasha Banks took on Shayna Baszler, then Asuka comes out. Asuka and Shayna are having a stare down, and then Sasha says, "Hey Asuka, if you can beat Bayley next week, you can get a title match." It's like a combination of the Asuka Shayna match that we expected, and then with Sasha thrown in there because they wanted the golden role models to have all the gold.
Which then leads me to believe that there'll probably be a fatal 4-way for the title at SummerSlam. Because they started a program with Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax. So, if you combine the four, then you have Shayna Baszler versus Asuka versus Nia Jax versus champion Sasha Banks. Then you can get all these whining programs about how everything's being stacked against the golden role models, because nobody in the upper management wants them to dominate the way they are. Then you can have Shayna Baszler win the title. That way you don't have to sacrifice the direct match between Asuka and Shayna Baszler, and you didn't have to put Shayna over at Asuka in the process. And then at Evolution, which we have heard rumors of a second Evolution pay-per-view, one of the golden role models versus Stephanie McMahon.
It's definitely going, I think, a different direction than we'd said a couple months ago. And as much as they'd previously been, you talked to us a year ago, we're sitting there going, oh, they're stalling on this Bayley-Sasha thing. They're not having them face off just yet. They could, oh my god, they could do it right. Oh, they didn't. Okay. And then it comes back around a year later and we say the exact same thing again. It feels like they've got us so close right now and then just not committing to that. They've sowed the seeds for like 7 years now. And the trigger's got to be pulled at some point. Thought it was SummerSlam. Oh, they thought it was before SummerSlam. Don't think it's at SummerSlam anymore, maybe. Maybe it'll be more towards Evolution or after. Who the hell knows when this trigger is going to get pulled?
Maybe they have pulled it, just misfired.
That's true. But even a bigger mystery than when is that trigger going to be pulled? Who poisoned Montez Ford?
I'm voting Zelina Vega.
Okay. If that came out of nowhere, maybe you didn't watch Raw. Basically, Montez Ford collapsed in the middle of his match, and it was revealed later on that he was poisoned. That's all we got.
Yeah, there was a confrontation between Bianca Belair and Zelina Vega and her team following the reveal, which leads me to believe that there'll probably be next week a Bianca Belair versus Zelina Vega match.
Which I'm down for. Always happy for. I don't know. You know what they say sometimes? The biggest swerve is no swerve at all. In which case, Zelina Vega is kind of the most obvious choice in front of you with all the red lights flashing. Or someone from that trio. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go with that or if they're going to completely shock everyone and go randomly. But I'm sure as the weeks go on, we will slowly learn more and more about this situation and what's happening.
And for all we know, it may tie into another crazy storyline that happened on this show.
Yep. We've got 2 more. I think. Okay, we've got 2 more utter crazy ones. So we'll go with our not so utter crazy one. Samoa Joe almost stepped up. Almost. And then Dominik Mysterio came down and cleared the ring.
Yeah, they're definitely laying the groundwork if they want to put Joe back in the ring. That said, I'm very interested and very excited for this match between Dominik and Seth Rollins. I think this is going to be. I think it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And the story that's been told, it's just so good.
Seth Rollins is just so easy to hate, both in storyline and outside of it at this point. But like in character, every single person in the WWE just cannot stand him. He could have feuds going with anybody at this point. And it just happens to be Dominik that is stepping up for this one. And yeah, if Samoa Joe needs to come in and be the equalizer for Murphy, or anything like that, maybe. Who knows?
Or a trainer for Dominik.
Sure. I think that could definitely help out. So we'll have to see how we continue to build to SummerSlam, which is still 2 weeks of content away. But yeah, we'll wait and see how a few of these develop, because maybe if he wants some training, he can just head on down to Raw Underground.
I'm fine with this. It's interesting. It'd be a great way to debut an NXT star, especially your boy.
Yeah,
going from one Dominik to another.
Yeah, he might have to just go by Dijakovic, maybe. But yeah, basically Shane McMahon rocks up and he's like, "Hey guys, we got some ring. It's got no ropes. We're just gonna fight." And I was sports entertained. There was worries. I'm gonna say they were worries that this was a bit brawl for Ollie, but it looks as though no, they definitely worked, so we're fine. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Because if it was, then I'm not down with it.
Result of this being somebody gets knocked out by a butterbean. At the end. Yeah, it's definitely got promise. We'll just have to see how long they go with it. I think that's one of the keys right there, is we have to figure out how long the storyline is going to last and the ultimate outcome. But I do think somebody is going to step up at the end of this, whether it's somebody from NXT like Dominik, or it's a Lesnar Fury type person from outside of WWE that comes in to work with Lashley.
Yeah, this was what I was alluding to earlier, in that despite Shane McMahon introducing it, the Hurt Business have essentially taken over the underground fight ring. And I think, to me, that is the most interesting part of Raw Underground. I think those three running it is going to add an extra element to it that it wouldn't have if it was just Shane McMahon coming on our screens yelling at us every week on Raw.
Also remember, the first rule of Raw Underground, you don't talk about Raw Underground.
Yeah, but do televise it every week. But yeah, I really like the decision to put the Hurt Business in charge. I think it honestly might be my favorite part of Raw Underground. Just having those three guys just being utter bad butts in the underground, and I think it's really going to work for that trio.
Especially with the background, the MMA background of Lashley. I think that will definitely play onto it, and I think will elevate whoever ends up taking down the Hurt Business at the end, unless it's somebody like Lesnar.
Yeah.
In which case, we may get the match that people have wanted to see, Lashley and Lesnar, but it's not going to end well for the Hurt Business.
This is I can see. I know we're running a little long into time. We'll go to song soon, I promise. I can see this getting a little Lucha Undergroundy. I don't know how much you watched, but not necessarily the in-ring stuff, but the weird side extra story stuff they had where it was basically like a cartel kind of thing. And I could see it getting close to that, where it's just like, I just step up. And then there's this, like, almost soap opera, but, like, gritty soap opera. I don't know the term for it.
Telenovela. That's Spanish for soap opera. I made it to Alberto El Patron's debut.
It's a good time to tune out, yeah.
Nope, I can't go any further. Yeah, I like the little side things that they did. So yeah, anytime you do anything unexpected or crazy for me, I'm going to be all for it because I want to see where it goes.
Mm-hmm. And talking about crazy and unexpected, the last thing on Raw, I said Raw had a lot of crazy and unexpected things. 5 masked people biffing molotov cocktails at generators and causing mics to cut out and lights to flash and crazy stuff.
Yeah. Hey, more please. Give me chaos. Give me stuff that we haven't seen recently. And let's see where this goes.
And we've learned that their name is Retribution, but nothing else.
I heard an interesting theory. Maybe they're all people that were released earlier in the year or forlorn, and this is their way of bringing them back. I've
heard that. I've heard some crazy things around what it could be.
I definitely hope it's not Undisputed Error. I think that would be a waste of a debut for them, which they're kind of busy at the moment anyway. But yeah, I want to see where they go with this. I want to see what kind of shenanigans they pull off. How in-depth they go with disrupting Raw.
Yeah, and it seems as though that there is at least one female competitor as well. So, be an interesting stable once it... Because obviously they're going to have this story to introduce them, and they're going to be disrupting, and they're going to be doing all this crazy stuff, but eventually, I presume, the end goal is going to be this faction wrestling. So it'll be interesting once we get out that side of stuff, to see, I guess, who's in it is probably going to drive what happens with it in terms of a wrestling faction as well.
True.
So, well, we're only like 8 minutes left in the show, so we're going to quickly rush on into our theme song this week. It is MJF from AEW's theme song. He delivered a state of the business address, and is overall doing pretty well, being the slimiest heel ever over in AEW. So his theme song's playing for you now.
I'm better than you, and you know it.
And you're back to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. Quickly through SmackDown, Grand Metalik had a shot at AJ Styles, but unfortunately could not capture the win.
As expected, but still a good match.
They did pretty good. It elevated Grand, definitely. King Corbin, he's still against Matt Riddle, and somehow managed to convince good old Shorty G to step up and side with King Corbin.
That's an interesting development, especially considering this time last year they were fighting tooth and nail over King Corbin's crown. Maybe we can get Shorty's name back through this.
It's possible. But what it is potentially leading to, based on an attack, but I presume that the match will get booked at some point, will be Shorty G versus Matt Riddle, which should be a spectacular match.
Yeah. I'm actually expecting a handicap match at SummerSlam.
Okay. I want the one-on-one, but the handicap should be fine as well.
Yeah, as I think this is just part of a bigger storyline. Especially since you don't want to just throw Matt Riddle at AJ Styles right now. So it's kind of like a holding place for him. He can deal with Corbin and Gable. And then AJ can successfully defend his title, whether it's against Daniel Bryan or whoever. And then, like a month or two down the road, when we're ready for Riddle versus AJ Styles, we can then pop it and go for it.
Mm-hmm. That's sort of the end goal, I guess. Unless one thing sidetracks that end goal, who is the man that I will talk about right now. The New Day have decided that they're going to have a new singles competitor emerge from the trio, finally, due to some injuries around the other members, and the Big E's going solo.
Yeah. I definitely think that would be very interesting to see him progress, and go after AJ Styles or whoever the Universal Champion is. I want to see them like gradually build him though, and I don't want to just throw him into a program with AJ Styles as champion. I want to see it like a couple months from now, like 4 or 5 months down the road, like Royal Rumble time.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I would like to see them start building towards Big E's moment, while they give him a bunch of wins to build him up as a solo, leading up to that.
Yeah, I could definitely see Big E winning the Rumble, if that's what we're going to build up to this year, or next year. Build him up so much as a singles competitor that he ends up coming out on top there. And I wouldn't be against it. I guess it depends what they do in the next 5 months. I had to do math really quickly in my head. But I think they can get him to that point where it's not incredibly crazy or out there. And it would be a good moment, win or lose, of the big world title for him to at least have underneath his belt.
Yeah, that's why I want it to be a slow build. I don't want it just an explosion, because I feel like fans might not care as much. Because it was like with Kofi, when Kofi was going for his run to the title, it wasn't just an explosion. They just didn't throw him into it. They built it over months, from the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania. All the twists and turns in the story made the moment when he won the title that much better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want for Big E. I want Big E to get some wins as a solo guy and elevate himself in solos, because he hasn't been that since he was Intercontinental Champion last time. And then November, December, start positioning, either if you want him to go after the Intercontinental title or you want him to win the Rumble, start positioning him towards that.
Mm-hmm. Jumping away from Big E, just to wrap up before we run out of time, Nikki Cross had one more shot at the SmackDown Women's Championship. She failed to capture it and got a little angry at Bliss. We thought maybe this is going to be the breakup. Someone's going to turn on someone. But Nikki Cross thought better of it and decides to just walk out, leaving her friend alone. Definitely alone with nobody else around until the creepy man shows up.
Starting with the Cross, I think this is definitely the beginning of a heel turn for Nikki. So I do think that the pairing of Cross and Bliss is coming to an end, which is why Ruby and Liv are so important as being put together as a tag team, because we're fixing to lose a tag team. But yeah, then Alexa gets attacked by the Fiend. I didn't see that coming, but
no.
I probably should have, considered she was had such an important role in the White Compound match.
She is definitely embroiled in that Fiend Strowman feud at this point. What happens after this for her? I have no idea.
I hope it's not what I've heard. People like, I want to see this, and I'm like, you don't want to see this. I don't care if they put her with Bray. That doesn't bother me. What would bother me would be making her the quote unquote Harley Quinn to his Joker.
Gotcha.
Because contrary to popular belief, that's not a very nice relationship.
Yeah,
between
don't
the
go
two of
looking
them.
that up. It's
So
pretty horrendous.
yeah, I don't want to see that kind of dynamic.
To be fair,
Um,
started off the same way. Similar. But yeah, it's not pretty. I don't quite know what they're going to head into, but I think all we know is that Fiend Strowman is continuing, obviously, for the Universal title. If Strowman's not already drowned in the swamp, since we haven't really seen him since. Hey.
The advertisements say he's supposed to be on SmackDown.
Coolio. And then Bliss is going to get thrown into that somewhere. Don't know where just yet, but she will be in that feud undoubtedly. Either way, we are completely out of time. Been great talking to you.
Bye, bye.
You can visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/WrestlingRadio, Twitter page, twitter.com/WrestlingRadio, and we'll see you next week.